Welcome to the Journey to Happy podcast, a podcast dedicated to women who do too much, who think too much, who worry too much, who prioritize everyone too much, who neglects herself too much. This is a place for you to hang out. We get you. I know exactly who you are. That used to be me. There is another way of going about life, and that is what I've dedicated this podcast to, teaching you a way in which you can be incredibly caring and compassionate and helpful, but without sacrificing your own well-being. My name is Olga Lacroix. I am a former therapist, a life coach, a coffee lover, a wife, blissfully a mother, and I am your host. I'm excited that you found this podcast, and I cannot wait to see you inside. Well, thank you so much, Simi, for being here. One of the reasons I wanted to have you come to the podcast and to my group Insight Reset is because we've been talking a lot about what it's like to be an empath. And I spotted you as an empath. When you said your Enneagram was number 2, I'm like, oh, for sure, Simi is an empath. And I've gripped a little bit your Instagram. I'm not afraid of saying it. I think you're an incredible human, and I was so happy. I'm so happy that my audience gets to hear from a real empath, also a very genuine human. Everything that you put on your social media comes across to me as like so genuine and so human. And I just feel that more people need to hear your message and more people need to know how Simi thinks, because it's just such a refreshing way to, from all accounts, from all things in social media, it's just so fun to find somebody who's human and who's just showing that human aspect. So that's why you're here, and this is the gift that we're giving to the audience to hear from you.
Well, those words mean so much to me, and I'm sure as a fellow empath, as a fellow empathetic human being, you will, maybe understand this or relate to this. But you saying that about the social media, it really means a lot, because social media, when you are a highly empathetic person, is a very hard place to spend time. And I often feel as if my true nature, like when I'm being true to myself, that I don't necessarily do social media the quote unquote right way, because it's not easy for me to live within formulas, if that makes sense. And so I follow a lot of people who have these amazing formula situations on social media, and they're sharing in like a very strategic way. And I find it just about nearly impossible to communicate in that way. And so sometimes I feel like, should I even be on social media? I don't know if this is the right place for me. And then also, I know we'll get into this more, but just the consumption of a lot of different stories and voices all at once, when you feel so intensely, it can really be incredibly intense to just scroll for 5 minutes on social media when you are taking in everybody's feelings and everybody's experiences. And so I appreciate you saying that, because sometimes I definitely have the thought of, I don't know if I know how to do this the right way. And so I appreciate
that. Empaths will definitely enjoy seeing your way of running things. I think I would probably give a heart attack to any social media strategist as well, because if I don't feel it, I'm not going to do it. And yes, the strategies don't always speak about my feelings, and it just doesn't work. Simi, if we were just to ask you, if I was to ask you to give us a little bit of background, I was introducing you to my research group last night when we were doing our mini retreat. Thank you for that idea. Thank you for the mini retreat idea, by the way. That it was so heart-filling for me, because I really missed doing retreats. I remember that you told me you were an attorney. You are a former attorney. Like, tell me about this shift, because tell us a little bit about what you do, actually. Let's just begin there. And then I'm going to pick your brain as to why you've made those changes.
Absolutely. So now, in present moment, present day, I am an intuitive eating counselor and a holistic health coach. I have a virtual bar membership that combines my love for bar and my love for helping women heal their relationships with food and movement in their bodies, called Unmeasured. So it's a virtual monthly bar membership that's all about helping people connect with a more intuitive, joyful relationship with movement through the practice of bar. And I'm the author of Letting Go of Leo: How I Broke Up with Perfection. And during this last year, I went back and am I went through a doula training certification program. So I'm through my training and just working towards that certification. That was something that I just felt really called to do in my heart. And I don't know how that will show up necessarily in my work, but I did get to support my first in-person birth like
Oh,
2 weeks ago, which was so cool. Before this work, so in the work that I do now, I work a lot with women who identify as perfectionists, and I really help them to release perfection and learn how to embrace their beautifully imperfect lives: food, body, movement, beyond. So really learning how to eat, move, and live intuitively versus based on all of these external rules and shoulds. And I've been doing this work now for a little less than a decade. So I guess I started my business about 8 years ago. Before that, I was a corporate healthcare attorney. I practiced law for 3 years before leaving the practice of law and entering into my business full time.
so I've got so many questions to ask you about all of it. One of the things I want to say for those listening, empaths, I think there is one big characteristic. We have so many passions.
Yes.
And we're moved by love. So we're like, but I love doing this. I just want to do that. And so it doesn't surprise me that you're like on career number 3 and you're like, I don't really know how this is going to fit in, but I really felt called to do this. I think I can say that about so many of the things that I've gotten myself into, uh, like opening a yoga studio. Like, I never in a million years would have thought I was going to do that. But I was like, but I really feel like a calling to do this. Um, so what made you make that shift from practicing law to opening your business, supporting women who identify as perfectionists?
So, really, my own personal experience in my relationship with myself ultimately ended up being the catalyst for that. So, I had a very decades long struggle with feeling like I was not enough. So, seeking my enoughness, my worth externally, and feeling like if I could do all of the things, follow all the rules, check all the boxes, somehow make myself perfect through manipulating my body with food and exercise, to always worrying about saying the right thing, doing the right thing, whatever it might be. I was just so fixated with feeling enough and looking for that externally that I had this decades long struggle. And my body was a big part of that. I really felt like my body was problematic. I tried every diet, really obsessive about exercise, struggled with disordered eating. My restriction ultimately led me to experience binge eating. And I was just very, very hard on myself. The inner dialogue was super critical. The actions were very punishing. Um, and a lot of things happened all at once. So I went to law school. For anyone who is familiar with law school or has been in law school, you will know this. For anyone who's not familiar with it, it's a super competitive environment. It's highly competitive, and very rigid and very structured. And in this environment, it was like a pressure cooker for all of the things that I had struggled with up until that point. So, had always struggled with anxiety, body image, perfection, et cetera, up until this point. But then put me into law school, it was a pressure cooker. And I really got to my most unhealthy place mentally, emotionally, physically, all of it really pushed me to my limit. I graduated from law school. I moved from Chicago to Columbus, Ohio, where I now live. to take the bar exam, to start my first job as an attorney. And also then, like within weeks after I started my first job, I also got married to my now husband. And so a lot of things, big changes were happening all at once. And had a wonderful wedding. We had so much fun. We went on our honeymoon. And I had this breakdown on our honeymoon because we were in Quebec City and it was so beautiful. Oh, it was such a magical place. And we're out to these beautiful dinners and it's supposed to be this magical week. I'm so in love with this person. I just started this great new job. And all I could think about was calories in the food and how many miles am I going to have to run tomorrow morning. And this was my reality most of the time, thinking this way. But there was something about being in this experience of this is a once in a lifetime experience, and just feeling like I wasn't able to be fully present. That was a bit of a breaking point for me, even though the experience I had on my honeymoon was basically my everyday life for many years at that point. But it was like I just got fed up because I wanted to be there and I couldn't be fully there. And all of these things, right? The restrictive eating, the over exercise, the perfection, they're all coping mechanisms and things that I had developed, over years and years. But it just got to it was this moment in time where I'm like, these things that I'm doing to try to fix myself are actually robbing me of my life. And I'm not able to be present and I'm not able to be fully here. And I'm pissed about it. I'm really upset about it. And so I had this breakdown. I shared with my husband everything that I was thinking and feeling. And this was really the first time that I had verbalized outside of myself the things that had been going on inside of myself. We had lived together for a couple of years. So it's not that he was shocked by any of this because he has seen my behaviors, right? Like, so it's not like I had been as secretive about this stuff as I thought that I had been. So he wasn't shocked or surprised, but it was the first time we really talked about it. And he was so supportive of me getting help and really reminding me that this is not how it has to be. Like, you don't have to hate yourself every second of every day. And so when I got back from our honeymoon, I really decided to get some support. And I got back into regular therapy. This was not my first time in therapy, but I hadn't been consistent with it. I don't think I had talked to a therapist all of law school, actually. So it had been a while. Got back into regular therapy. And I really wanted someone to help me specifically with the food stuff. So I was Googling like nutritionists, et cetera. And I came across a website for someone who was a health coach. These were the first time that I ever heard. This was the first time I ever heard those words. Like, I didn't know the job of health coach existed. Also, remember, this was like a decade ago. So it was before coaching really became this like more mainstream thing. And so I clicked on this website. She was local to Columbus, Ohio. And I was reading her website and, she had great copy. Like, it spoke right to my heart. I was like, this woman is what I need. So I reached out to her. Her name's Amy Marsloff. She's just like a true angel. And I cried through our entire consult. We were just on the consultation and I just couldn't stop crying because I just felt like hope. I felt like there was hope for the first time in a long time. And so I was able to just let my guard down. And so I started working with her. And our work together was really just all about me starting to learn how to listen to myself, which is something that I had shut off many, many years before. Discovering, like, what did I even like to eat? How did I like to move my body? What was fun for me? Like, the idea of fun, pleasure, those are things that I had become so disconnected from because I was all about the rules and the checking the boxes and what am I supposed to do? And so that was the beginning of what ultimately ended up being my intuitive eating journey. She was really helping me to release the rules, release the restriction, and connect back to pleasure and satisfaction and fun. Um, and through doing that work with her, number one, I discovered that a health coach was a job that existed. I did not know that before. And number two, it really was like this unlocking of a door to within myself. And I feel like I took the first steps to reconnect with myself, to my desires, to my emotions, to my needs. And it was both of those things that were the catalyst of a change in career, because through connecting back to myself, I almost had this, I don't know, I mean, I guess it was an awakening. Like, I feel like I woke up and was like, oh my gosh, how did I even get into this career that I have so much respect for? And I love my colleagues. Like, I have no negative feelings towards the practice of law or towards the people that I worked with. But it was like waking up in someone else's life and thinking, how did I even get here? Because for the first time in so long, I was connecting to myself. And I just realized I am not passionate about this at this moment in time. Like, this is not what I want to be doing. And so through that, like literally just through my journey with food, I developed deeper self connection, and it started to trickle into all of the other areas of my life. And I, through some self reflection and work, I discovered that what I really wanted to do at that moment in time was to help other women who were struggling in their relationships with themselves, who were so focused on the rules and doing what they should that they had lost touch with themselves. And I wanted to help women to connect back to themselves, to come home to themselves, to connect with their intuition. And so while I was practicing full time as an attorney, I went back to school to become a health coach, did like a year-long certification, and then started seeing clients in the morning and at nighttime and building up that practice. And then ultimately, when I got to a place where I was able to transition full time into that. So it was by virtue of, number one, working with my own health coach and realizing like this is an actual career that I didn't even know existed before. But even more so than that, doing the work to connect back to myself so I could even figure out what it was that I wanted to do.
And I just want to highlight how sometimes we shy away, especially as empaths, to hear our own voice. A lot of my clients end up being empaths, and they would tell me, I'm lost, I want to find my voice. And I'm like, your voice is there. You're just ignoring it for so long that something is going to be really loud so you can hear it. And that seems difficult, but I think nothing is more difficult than ignoring that voice, as you just experienced. You just explain what you experience in that ignoring of who you really were and what you were all about. But I love that in your story, it's also so clear that once we make that connection to our home, even if we have to pivot and make drastic changes, where people be like, what? You're not going to practice law? How long have you been studying for this? You can do that with such an ease because you now had that connection to self where you felt really intentional. By the way, I went to law school too. I didn't finish because I had to move to Canada. But interesting how some empaths begin with law. It's a way of helping.
Well, and I do think that there are these elements of the practice of law that do draw in people who are empaths, right? Because there's the idea of justice and of people having a voice and of equality. Like, there are a lot of things about the practice of law. I'm not saying those things are always there in the true practice, right? Yeah. But about the idea of it that I think can be like deep points of connection, and that some empaths find very fulfilling careers in that practice, especially because of those things.
Exactly. And so let's talk about what being an empath is. Because last night when I was talking to my empaths, they were like, I really want. So we were like kind of defining what being an empath is. I asked one of my clients who wasn't too sure she was one. I'm like, so when somebody tells you their problem, do you sleep that night, no problem? Or do you think about things that night and maybe a few more nights? And she was like, no, I sleep. I'm like, you're not an empath. That's my easiest definition of like, you can't just shut it off. It's part of who you are, but you learn to manage it. And And managing sometimes it implies making, career changes and realizing like this might not be it. When I came to Canada from Colombia, and I couldn't just transition into law school because I didn't speak French. If I had spoken French, I would have been able to. I went to school for human rights, and I thought I'm going to do things in reverse. I'm just going to study human rights, and then I go to law school, finish with law school, and I couldn't sleep. Like it nearly killed me emotionally to read all of these human rights violations all over the world. And so I knew I had to make a shift. And that's how I personally end up in the School of Social Work instead of law. And definitely I could never do human rights. Was just not for me.
It's so hard. I worked in law school. I worked in crime victim services at the AG's office. And I mean, you're just like I was sitting at my desk, just like in tears every single day. And then you talk to people who are, doing that work consistently and talking about how you become, there's a certain part of you that becomes used to it or, desensitized to it. And I didn't get to that point, but I would just go home every night and I literally couldn't stop thinking about it. I mean, it just goes so deep. And I think, empathy, feeling for someone else, being able to imagine what it's like in someone else's shoes, there's like so much value to that. And I do think that is such a gift. And I also think that when you are an empath and that is how you walk through life, that it's so important to care for yourself and for your emotions, and also to not get so pulled into what other people are experiencing or feeling that you are completely disconnected from yourself and from your own feelings. And I'd be so curious to hear if you think that this is true, but I also think that many people who are empaths at one point or another struggle with people pleasing, because it's like you're just thinking about the other and thinking about how they feel and what would make them happy. And so I think many empaths struggle with people pleasing, and then many people pleasers struggle with perfection.
Yeah.
And so it's like this sort of, this, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but this, cause and effect situation, like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? But I see that a lot, like those three things intertwined.
Hey guys, it's me interrupting your podcast for a moment to personally invite you to work together. If you are a woman who has been overthinking for far too long, if you're feeling a little exhausted of your own mind and just want to have a break, I want you to take that break too. If you want to know how to stop overthinking things or the past, how to stop worrying so much and find that perfect balance between caring and taking care of you, prioritizing yourself. If you feel that your perfectionist mindset is taking the best of you, you find yourself procrastinating on the things that are good for you and really focusing on the things that are not really serving you, like worrying about what others think of you, worrying about people's judgment of yourself. If you've got weak boundaries because of your own needs of being accepted and not rejected, and if you worry about people's perception to the point that you have disconnected from your own identity, from what you like, from what you want, that underlying anxiety caused by overthinking, taking things personally, and carrying the loads of everyone's issues in your own shoulders, hey, I'm speaking to you. I want to get you out of there, my friend. I have been you. I know what it's like to be that woman. I know what it's like to be so sensitive and caring and impacted by the things around you and wanting to keep it all in balance while not actually getting personally negatively impacted. I get it. Been there. There is a way out of this. There is a way for you to live life with healthy boundaries, have really strong, powerful relationships where you get to shine through within your power. It's possible. I do it. I am a living proof example of that. And so are my coaching clients. For the remaining of the year, 2021, I've got 4 spots available for one-on-one work. And if you're listening to this in the month of April, I have just opened a second cohort of my most powerful coaching program, group coaching program, Becoming the CEO of Your Own Life. And as always, you can join me inside Reset Your Mindset, the membership, at a really low cost, all of which is available to you. All you have to do is make a decision that life that you're currently living can improve if you just make that choice. So I would love to see you. I would love to support you. I've got a variety of services. They're all in my show notes. You have all the links. Browse around, or you know what? If you actually want to talk with me for 15 minutes, you can book yourself in and we get to have a discussion about what program will suit you best. But from the bottom of my heart, I want you to know that the life of the overthinker, of the person who worries too much, who gives too much, who neglects herself too much, does not have to continue. Just because that's all you know doesn't mean you have to keep there. You know you can do better. I know you can do better. So let's work together. You've done the self books, you've done the therapy. It's time for a change. Life coaching is for you, and I am excited, genuinely excited to help you navigate through whatever it is that you're going through. Talk to you soon. Which is funny because last night in the retreat, people were like, so how do we get rid of being an empath? I'm like, that's not it. You have to embrace it. But you just explained the exact reason empaths want to not be empaths, because, oh my God, if I'm not feeling their emotions, then I'm in people pleasing mode. And if I'm not in people pleasing mode, then I mean, I'm not good enough. That was not good enough. So how can I become perfect to finally be enough? Funny, I just was coaching somebody earlier. This is exactly what she was describing to feel. And I do agree. I think that the empath tends to want to please people because we, by definition, are almost never connected to self. We're always connected to like our feelers are just feeling our surroundings, which is why it's so important that we talk about the self-care of the empath. I also think that many empaths, sooner or later in our life, we will burn out because if you do not refill that cup, being as giving as empaths are, well, energy is not something that just happens. You really have to work at it. And I don't believe in protecting my energy, and I'll share my thoughts about that in a moment. But I do believe in cultivating that energy. And so for me, self-care, it's like I feel my energy is it's as abundant as love and as strong as love is. It doesn't need protection at all, but I need to be very intentional about where I'm placing it, what I'm saying yes to, what I'm saying no to. And so self-care for me is not a bath, a hot bath and like, I don't know, eating ice cream. That makes me happy for a moment, but that is not self-care for me. So I'm just curious to like, this is why I wanted to have this conversation to teach the empath what self-care looks like for us. And so I'll be happy to share my thoughts, but I'm so curious to hear how does Simi practice self-care, because you are currently helping lots of women and you didn't go from one career that helps to another one that doesn't. You're still pretty much being of service to our community. So how do you do that? How do you manage this? Do you believe in protecting your energy? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just what you said about that you don't need to protect your energy, that it's as abundant as love, that I resonated with that so much. And I just love the way that you put that. That was so beautiful. I wouldn't have been able to, like, those would not have been my words. I wouldn't have been able to find those words, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing that wisdom. I definitely agree that I do not feel like I need to, that I don't need to feel that, I don't feel that I need to protect my energy. I do feel that a big part of my personal work is being intentional about where I put my energy and making peace with saying no. Because again, going back to the people pleasing thing, that is, and I think will be a thing for me that will always be hard. And that doesn't mean that it isn't important. It doesn't mean that I don't practice it, but I don't know that saying no will ever be something that is easy for me, because in my mind, I always think, I don't want this person to feel rejected. I don't want this person to feel that I don't think that they are worthy or enough or amazing, or that this isn't like, an incredible thing that they're asking me to do. And so that's where my mind goes, right? Like, and when I am presented with an ask, I'm thinking more about how the other person's going to feel when they get my response. That's my instinct.
Natural. Yeah. You're
More, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, a big part of self-care is pausing before I respond to someone. So before I say yes or no to an invitation or whatever it might be, a big part of my self-care work has been giving myself permission to not respond instantly, so that I have a moment to really reflect on, am I able to do this and show up for this in a way that is, what this offer deserves, or, what in alignment with my values and my priorities right now in life, and what is, the cost of me saying yes to this. Because as I'm sure many empathetic people pleasers can relate to, there have been times where me trying to say yes to every single person has really been harmful to the things in my life that are most important. So, like, my most core important relationships. And not to say that those human beings are more valuable and worthy than other human beings, but like, they are the most
That's
important
the
things in my
empathy
life.
saying that.
Yeah. And so times where I've said yes to so many things that it's like I don't have quality time to really be with my husband or to really be with my kids. And so for me, I have had to really practice pausing. And so that is one practice of self care that has been huge for me. And then also to remember that I am not responsible for how someone else feels. I am not responsible for everybody's feelings. I am responsible for how I speak to someone else, for how I treat someone else, but not for how they feel. And so that those things have been really huge for me. It's a very important self-care practice for me to unplug from electronics and have time away from my inbox, from social media, um, from being inundated with many different people's opinions and experiences. Again, not because I'm devaluing their opinions or their experiences, but because I need time separate from that to connect to myself, to my feelings, to, my thoughts and my ideas, to the people in my, real in-person life, like those connections. And so self-care for me is also family time, or like conversations with my best friend, things like that.
Yeah.
Therapy, coaching, time again where I get to process through the things that are coming up. Like, those are big self-care. And then for me, prayer is a big thing. Um, and so I need activities and practices that help me to calm my nervous system and to really be present with myself and to tune in, to myself, because it is very easy for me to get swept up and almost just like float away from myself and from my life. And so I need things that allow me to ground back down and to come home to myself, to my life. Yeah. So that's really self-care for me.
I feel like you were spying on my previous coaching call that I had with a client of mine, and I was describing how I practice self-care for myself, and it's like pause. I actually call it a pause. And I often tell people, practice it with easy things. Like, do you want bread? Like, take a pause and think, do I really want bread? Like, just, we are on autopilot saying yes.
Yes.
Anything is yes, yes. Oh, wait, what? No, I don't want to jump off that bridge. Why did I say yes to that? And so something that was big for me a saying that I never met my grandmother. I was named after her, my mom's mom. But a teaching that she taught my mom, that my mom has embodied and like become, do things with love or don't do them at all. And so I actually have that written in like and framed in my house. And to me, this was a great way to learn to say no. Because if I cannot do this with love, I'm going to say no, because otherwise I'm going to be resenting. And if that's happened to you where you're like, why do people call me all the time? Oh, wait, because I answer that phone and I stay on the phone. Yes. Or like, why are people asking for so many favors? Because you always offer to do favors, right? Like it wasn't their fault. It's not like they're stealing my energy. I'm giving it. I'm not sharing my energy. I'm giving it all to my own detriment. One of my clients is practicing saying yes more without saying no to her. And so I really love that approach, because it's essentially what you were saying. Okay, me saying yes to attending this event, does that say no to me doing what? To myself or to my family? Or like, what will be the cost of that? Empaths never measure cost. We're just such a big givers. We're like, give away everything we have, including our energy. Yes. And then our health goes off, our anxiety goes up, our stress goes up, and we don't account that that's the cost of giving unmeasurably. Like everything you have, anything you have, like just give away. And so I do love, for me, saying no is not easy. Now it's not difficult. I've come to the place where saying no feels so assertive, because I only say no when I actually mean it. I don't say no to be difficult. I'd say no because in reality, I cannot do it. For me, I think I'm a bit older than you, and I burn out at the age of 23. I had just started my profession in social work, but of course I want to be perfect at it. And I took the most complicated cases, and I was working child abuse, child protection. Like you, I was reading files and crying my eyes out. My supervisor told me so many times, you're not capable of this job. Like you just feel so much. But the good thing about me having done that job and how I'm burnout is that I learned to say no, maybe the hard way, but now I have such an ease to say no, only because I say it when I mean it, because it's my truth, like there is no guilt. But I first started practicing saying no without an explanation. And that was hard, because I was chatting earlier with my client. She says, when I finally say no, then I want to overcompensate. But I'll bring you flowers, but I'll do this, but I'll do, like just, so in the end, she's not really saying no. Like,
child.
So I do think it's something that with practice, we strengthen that muscle. My instinct continues to be saying yes, and how much can I take? How much can I do for you? Maybe for you it's the same. Becoming a mom has really shifted things for me, because I'm still an empath, so I still feel all feelings that my child might feel. So I never want him to go without. So it makes me be a little bit more precise with and intentional with what I say yes to, based on what he wouldn't have if I'm saying yes to so many things. The other thing that you said that I thought was so good is movement. You sort of talked about doing the things that relax your nervous system. I think it's fair to say that the majority of empaths suffer from anxiety because we have these feelings that we don't even know where they belong to, who they belong to. You could be sitting right next to somebody who's sad, and suddenly you're sad and you're like, why do I have these heavy feelings? Tell me how you use movement as part of you utilizing this for self-care.
Absolutely. So movement has been a big part of my personal journey, because like I shared before, there was a time where I really used it almost like as a punishment or a way of fixing myself through working out my relationship with movement and becoming more intuitive with movement. It is now one of, I would say, my favorite ways that I take care of myself, and so powerful in terms of helping to process the emotional weight that can come on through empathy. For me, number one, movement is a way to get out of my head. When I'm moving, it helps me to really connect with my body. And for anyone who has experienced anxiety, you know that you very much go into your head. You can almost feel like dissociated from your body, disconnected from your body. So for me, movement is a practice of getting back into my body, coming home to my body, connecting with my body. And it is also a way for me to allow emotion to move through me. By moving my body physically, I can so often literally feel the emotion moving up and through and out. And like you just shared, sometimes you can be sitting next to someone and you absorb their emotion. It's hard enough as human beings to process through our own emotion, right? Like experiences that we've had, emotional process, let alone when you just absorb someone else's emotion. It's even harder to process through something that like you technically weren't even feeling, but now all of a sudden you are, and it came out of nowhere. So for me, movement is an incredible way to allow emotion to move through me and to release. And then also, a lot of times when I'm moving, I'm usually doing one of three things. I'm either out in nature, right? Like going for a walk. So hearing the sounds of nature, the smells, and it's so calming to my nervous system. Or I'm listening to music. So if I'm doing bar or I'm dancing with my kids, the movement helps to shift the emotional energy. Or I'm playing with my kids, which also is like so joyful and fun and helps me to connect to that childlike part of myself. So between nature, playing with my kids, like their just childlike presence, and then also movement, I feel like that's also another component of the movement experience that is so supportive.
I find it fascinating how we can grab a personality type and like just be like, yeah, all those things apply to me. It's one of the reasons I wanted to dive into who the empath is within my coaching group, because I don't know you, but I had to research the crap out of what's happening to me. Like, why do I feel all the feelings? Why do people call me a drama queen? Why do like often I will be labeled as exaggerating things? You don't understand. Like I feel it to that degree. Like that's a real story. I feel this so much. And then just like a sponge. Like going to a hospital, for example, used to be a nightmare for me. I'll just be like, I just feel so much. What's happening here? And nature is my best friend. I think that for anybody listening, you probably already know this. It's not like we're breaking you new science here. Like you probably know these things. I think the self-care part for me was the discipline to implement these things on a regular basis in my life. That as an empath, I would always think first of the emotions that I was aware, which were not mine, were the people's emotions. And I wouldn't be aware that I needed to balance out being who I was to be able to continue to be all things for all people. Mm-hmm. And I find it wasn't my nature to go out in nature. Like if it happened, I would always enjoy it and loved it and like felt so relieved. But I think a huge part of self-care for me is, especially as an empath, is having that intentionality and put it as much as you can in your calendar. There's got to be a you time at some point, and committing to that regardless of how busy things are and how tough life is. Like I've noticed, I don't know you, but I've noticed when life gets tough, I tend to neglect my needs more or just not do the things that I know help me because I don't have time. Like this is a stressful time, or my friend needs me, or my husband needs me, so I can't be doing these things. And renewing that commitment to self-care has been important to me. And also breaking the myths of what self-care is. Not just going to the spa. It's not just getting a massage. Those are wonderful things, but honestly, they don't do a lot to my emotional well-being and to my mental health so much. They're a great hour, but I don't know how to sustain this massage therapist for forever, right? Like, and as a former therapist, I 100% support therapy. But if you can just learn the tools and then apply them and remember to apply them, I think that that is, for me, real self-care.
Yeah. And I think I feel like you touched on something so important, which is that empaths need consistent practices, right? There has to be those consistent practices. And as fun as it is to go to the spa, I would say most of us do not have the ability to do that every day.
No.
Like I can't go to the spa every morning for 2 hours. I maybe like once a year get to go have a massage. It's very lovely, love the experience, but it's probably not going to be a daily practice, a daily discipline for the majority of people. And so I really love that you pointed that out, because I do think sometimes the conversation about self-care becomes about these things that, like you said, are really, really nice. It's like going on a vacation. That is wonderful. I feel very relaxed. It's amazing. That's not my everyday life though. So I need these everyday practices, because being an empath is an everyday experience.
It is. You can't, and like we were talking about avoiding it, you can't. And if you resist it grows and it's going to be overwhelming. And so that has been like, I wouldn't have used, I think in the past, maybe movement was also a form of calculating, calories and pounds and like what I'm doing with this weight that I have. Whereas since understanding what it does to my mental health, to my emotional well-being, it's a no-brainer. I get up and I move. And I don't subscribe to a 9-week program. And if I don't do this program, I'm out. I get up in the morning, and as an intuitive person, because I think empaths were just intuitive, I ask my body, what do you feel like doing today? And sometimes that's part of the 9-week program that I'm doing. And sometimes it's just going for a walk in nature. And sometimes it's just laying in bed and making angels on my bed. Just like, this is nice. And this is all I need. This is all the movement I need. Because the empath tends to be a perfectionist, the black or white mentality comes to get the best of us. So they're probably listening to this podcast, taking notes. Okay, so as of tomorrow, I gotta move every day. But then if you bring that level of restrictiveness or being so strict, you might not sustain this long term.
Totally. Yeah, it's having a toolbox of things that are supportive, and then being able to connect to yourself and say, like, which tool am I going to pull out of this box today and use? It's not like, okay, for this 15 minutes, then this 15 minutes, then this 15 minutes. It's, you get to have the tools that are tried and true that you've practiced, and then you can be intuitive about which ones you pull out.
Yeah. And then the consistency. So I would say the number one self-care tool, as Simi said, is the taking the pause, like connecting to what do I actually want to do? Or how do I feel about X, right? Like whatever you're being asked, especially when we're being asked, because that's when we feel the pressure to people please. We feel that they're asking because they have this need and I better supply that need. Taking that pause, the consistency to the things that you already know, make you feel happy, or make you feel relaxed, or make you feel powerful, or make you feel glad that you're alive. I don't know what that is for and it might change every day. Like it changes for me, definitely. What else are we missing that is important? Oh, connection. We talk about connection. Obviously, we need to connect. So now with COVID, I think that has been really heavy for many of us. I have it in my calendar to call my brothers. Like it's actually in my calendar as a reminder, so that I can FaceTime them. And never do I finish one of those calls with regret. It's always like, why did I do this more often? I love, and then I think of my brother the rest of the day and how much I love him. And so I think that this is very important, that you are selective of who you want to connect with, and that you make the time for that. You're deserving of that connection.
Yes. And that you let people in, right? Because I think empaths, caregivers, people who are, twos, whatever it is, it's the instinct is to check in with the other person, to want to take care of the other person, to want to know how the other person's doing, which obviously is incredibly important. And for people to feel close to you, you have to let them in and let them do that for you too. So I think that, it's so important to remember, like, yeah, pick those people that you really want to connect with and let them in to your inner world. Let them know how you are doing. Let them take care of you. Let it be reciprocal, because that's where depth in relationships really comes in.
I agree. And you brought me back to the perfectionist in me that would have always wanted people to not worry. So I'll always be like, oh, I'm good. All is good. Everything is perfect. Marriage is good. Child is, everything is good. And suddenly I'll have a conversation with somebody where they were like, why have you been saying you've been good? I don't know. I didn't want to worry you. So I think that this is very important. The depth of those connections, it has to be back and forth. And just as much as we want to support, our inner child wants to be supported. Like, you want to know that somebody cares, that somebody's listening, that somebody's on your end. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned playing with your children. I don't think I've ever been as happy as I have been over the last 16 months, but especially over the last, I would say, 6 months, where my son can interact with me and we can play. Because I've always known there's a child in me that wants to play and do fun things and laugh at stupid things. And so I think that for empaths, connecting to the child inside of you is great. And if you have children around that you can do that with, do it. And if not, don't be apologetic about watching Disney movies by yourself and just wanting a child, because that's, that's what's inside of us.
Absolutely.
That's fun. Anything else, Simi, that you wanted to share with our audience before we conclude?
Well, first, just thank you for having me. This has been so wonderful. And I think the only other thing, that we've touched on a little bit, but I feel like is such a good thing to say at the end, is that I think, I believe that empathy is a true gift to this world, and empaths are gifts in this world. And so I do believe every empath has a moment on their journey, or multiple moments, where it's like, how do I get rid of this? Or I wish I wasn't like this. Honestly, I had a moment like that last night where I said to my husband, I'm like, I just wish I didn't have to, this isn't how I experience the world. And so I still have those moments where I have to remind myself, this is a gift. It's just about learning how to care for yourself in this moment, the way that you want to take care of everyone else too. Yeah. So it's a gift.
It's a gift. Last night in my retreat, that was our conclusion. This is a beautiful thing we have. And it's so, nobody feels like you feel. Imagine that. We have this gift of feeling. And I do think that we are the invisible glue that keeps just Earth together. We have such a sense of humanity and connection and understanding that this planet needs us more than ever to just mitigate differences and to just be that loving force that walks around, which is why it's so essential to our entire planet's well-being that we take care of ourselves, because Absolutely. We are so needed. We're like the light in the dark. And so I think to myself, the moments where I hate being an empath is because I've neglected me, and something has been, I've not been doing something for long enough that now I'm like, oh, I'm not even putting boundaries anymore. This got to me. And I mean, we can get triggered any given point that somebody that we were not expecting, something happens to them and we're like, why do I have to feel it so intensely? And then to remember that that's a gift in those moments, and to turn that inwards to what am I learning and how can I shine through this powerfully and with love.
Absolutely.
Simi, thank you so much. I can't wait for everybody to hear this. And I think everybody will be so lucky to work with you, to join your bar classes, to join health. I will have all that information in the show notes. So if you guys want to hear more about what Simi's up to and get to experience her energy, just go on our show notes and you'll be able to hear all about her and get a copy of her book.
Thank you so much. This was
Yeah.
a way to be here with you. I just am so grateful for any time that I get to share with you.
Thank you, Simi. Thank you so much.